Tesla Semi Varsity versus Daimler Benz and others Junior Varsity is our primary story for today. We also do some cleanup issues relative to the stock price of Tesla increasing, and then we also get into our health tips as usual. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is the first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Wanted to also encourage you to like and subscribe if you enjoy the show. And as always, we can use help on Patreon if you would. And we also want to thank our Patreon and our subscribers. So one of the interesting things that's been going on in the recent weeks is that in the case of both VW and with Daimler Benz, they've been having all kinds of problems getting finished products out when it comes to EVs. We're showing some Tesla produced video of the electric truck here as our B-roll, and I wanted to make sure we had it in the background given that it was a truck theme for today. By the way, what you'll see there is that not only do you have the Tesla trucks, but you also have what's called platooning, where they're having 2 or 3 trucks follow each other with a driver in the front truck, but not the last 2. And this allows you to move a lot of freight with fewer people. So what our theme today is the idea of a varsity Tesla versus a junior varsity Daimler Benz. And we would argue that our theme seems kind of silly. And the reason is that Tesla's market cap is $70 billion. And then now with the increase in its stock price, but VW is still bigger, I believe at $100 billion. Same thing with Daimler Benz, same thing, particularly with Toyota at $260 billion. So when you have that much money and market cap and sales to go with it, etc., you're supposed to have these natural advantages that others cannot compete with. And so it's a bit of surprise to see Tesla both establish and maintain its advantages despite the presence of huge companies with huge amounts of resources in the midst. Hence our theme of varsity Tesla versus junior varsity Daimler Benz and others. Let's review some other data points here that we think are interesting. Number one, right now it's sort of come out that the way to deal with Tesla had been determined to just get a very large battery, let's say 100 kW, put it in your car, and now you're going to have the same range that a Tesla vehicle might, enabling you to be very competitive. The conclusion is that that really hasn't worked out. And so what you're resulting in then is Tesla's offering customers a 300 to 400 mile range, anywhere from 220 to about 369 miles in range, depending on what you spend. But if you do get that 100 kilowatt hour battery for cars at least, you are getting, a 350 mile range vehicle. Why is 350 a big deal? Because customers have said that anytime you go over 300 miles of range, there's 75% of the population interested. And when you stay below 300 miles of range, you have below, as in 100 miles, only 25% of the population is interested. So what we're seeing right now is that the major autos, VW, Mercedes, to some extent GM, etc., are all delivering about 200 miles of range. And while customers are interested in picking up, the early adopter folks are in there buying, you're really not getting purchases from the large sort of bulk of the population. And you're also ending up with some interesting challenges relative to your brand. In particular, part of the game of any business is how well do you help your customers execute. And if you have a situation where you're delivering a product and it's not anticipatory of many of the challenges that your customers may have. It can affect whether or not they want to continue buying from you short and long term. And so we think that the fact that Tesla is delivering all this range, added to it the superchargers and a global footprint and the ability to move long distances in major areas like the United States, China, and Europe, riding on those superchargers. All of these advantages represent a fairly large mountain for competitors to climb, and we thought this was fascinating. The sort of major theme that we had come up with is targeting trucks, and the fact that it just really looks like a JV versus a varsity situation. For those of you who don't know what that means, particularly in Europe, in the United States, in most high schools settings, there's a varsity team that plays the best and biggest players, usually juniors and seniors. And there's a junior varsity, usually freshman and sophomore, that are sort of a developmental group of players that'll be ready to start and play when they are seniors, they become varsity. So we kind of chose this theme because it seemed very strange for Tesla to be so small as a company in terms of how many vehicles it puts out, but it's also the varsity when it comes to electric vehicles. So we just thought that the paradox or the irony was delicious, because most of the rules of how the auto industry works have been established and maintained by the biggest firms, and those firms are finding a frustrating circumstance as they try to compete with Tesla. So, part of the general theme of challenges right now, or intrigue, is that with Tesla's ability to deliver huge range at, let's say, the 100 kW battery, there's another issue that pops up, which is because Tesla produces its own battery at scale, they're actually able to make a profit on a 100 kilowatt hour battery that's an $80,000 to $100,000 vehicle. The challenge for the big other makers is the fact that when they put a battery of that size inside of a vehicle, it can be done. They are doing it. Not only they are not getting the range, more like 200 miles instead of Tesla's 350 miles, but they're also experiencing the fact that their battery packs are costing approximately $80,000. So they're delivering the vehicles somewhat that customers want to see, but all those vehicles are currently money losers until they can go back into the supply chain and figure out how to deal with the strength of Tesla. So we found this, one of our viewers asked me not to say interesting, but you have to admit this is very strange to have a small company enter a 100-year-old niche and systematically bludgeon very large competitors. And so the holding theme for why Tesla's stock price hasn't broken out until now has been wait until the big firms that they compete with in the auto industry emerge with their products, and then now those products will dramatically take away market share from Tesla. And if anything, the opposite has occurred as Tesla has rolled out the Model 3 more broadly. The sales of competing products have actually been declining, and that theme, I think, will continue as we enter the era of the Model Y, because currently there's no sort of affordable SUV that folks can buy from Tesla, and Elon has articulated, and we agree with the fact that the Model Y will outsell all the other vehicles that Tesla produces combined. So what this theme really is highlighting is the fact that, Tesla, while being sort of late to market because they didn't have as much money to come out, they actually are able to enter the market space and sort of devastate competitors in a very impressive way without having all the inherent advantages of the huge firms around the world. So we kind of were sort of, we thought this was good to look at because there's a concept that, again, we're sharing that we're calling it varsity versus junior varsity. And it sounds silly because how can companies like Daimler with a commitment of $30 billion in the electric space, be considered junior varsity because one, they have a whole bunch of money, two, they have a whole bunch of success already, and three, they're rolling into a space that in theory they've controlled effectively for a very long time. And so you have to admit that this is a little bit of, sounds sort of crazy, and hence why we sort of came up and thought about this theme and decided to do a show on it. Now, there's what I call level 2 varsity that's going on currently between Freightliner and the Tesla Semi. And what that is that we're 6 months away from the first deliveries of Tesla's Semi to customers. Daimler has already delivered a few via its Freightliner subsidiary to the Port of Los Angeles, and those vehicles are being used. The challenge with those vehicles that illustrates the varsity versus junior varsity is the fact that Tesla is now able to move the full 80,000 pounds and have the freight portion of it be in the range of 40,000 pounds, with the vehicle weight being the rest. So that 80,000 pounds is critical because that's the max allowed on interstates without exceptions in the United States. And Tesla is able to work within those parameters and provide a truck that's comparable in freight weight to diesel trucks. In the case of Daimler with their Freightliner division, they are not able to deliver in a similar fashion. So a couple of performance parameters would be that the Tesla Semi rolls in at about $250,000, carrying a vehicle weight of in the range of 35,000 pounds, and therefore the remainder of it is weight that can be carried as freight. In the case of the Daimler trucks, because they're using sort of traditional battery setup to get a 250-mile range, the truck is actually $450,000. And because of how heavy the battery setup is there, they're actually experiencing a very high price, number one, but number two, battery weight is up in the 60 to 65,000 pound zone, which result in a freight carrying weight of only 15,000 pounds. So the challenge is when the weight is so low that you're carrying, you might as well go to a smaller vehicle because a Class 7 doesn't have as much operating cost from a number of angles, and it would carry the same amount of weight. So in essence, the Daimler solution does not work in this case. And as we noted from the folks at Tesla, particularly the CTO, the battery solutions Tesla offers scales well into all kinds of solutions, including trucks. So the problems that Daimler and others are having competing with Tesla at the level of cars is now scaled up into trucks. And it's even a bigger disaster because the cost differential when it comes to cars for those companies to be competitive is not that broad. But once you scale it up into trucks, the numbers can become very, very much different. And so, you almost don't want to go into trucks unless you're ready to go varsity, because the competition you're dealing with, the nature of the issues you're dealing with are amplified by 4 times. So now a situation where you're putting out these trucks at a very high price, and there's not the use case of being able to move legitimate freight loads is not achievable by those vehicles. So we're now in a situation where Daimler and others at the truck side are really putting out vehicles that they hope will help, keep the customer eye trained to some extent, but they're really not heavily viable in terms of what the customer needs might be when it comes to movement of goods, in that circumstance. So we were kind of intrigued because we looked around. There's a Forbes article out right now, the 21st of December, 2019, regarding the fact that the Semi will contribute by 2025 about $2 billion in sales to Tesla. And we thought that was an interesting number because at this point, they have about 3,000 reserve vehicles, most of which have already been paid for. The those vehicles are rolling in, let's say, at an average of $250,000. So with 1,000 vehicles, that's $2.5 billion in revenue. And if we go to 3,000 vehicles, that's already $6 billion in revenue on the books already. And they're going to deliver probably $1 billion of that in 2020. So we were kind of surprised to see maybe Tesla can do $2 billion by 2025 in semi. We're thinking that if they do hustle, they could actually do $2 billion in revenue for the semi by the end of 2020, 4 years ahead of the estimates that have been put forward by entities like Forbes. So again, this goes back to the whole theme of the varsity versus junior varsity. So we're actually looking forward to what your guys' thoughts on this are. One of our themes is to definitely blend in a show about trucks every couple of weeks. And 2020 is lining up to be a very exciting year for Tesla because there's a large number of new products that are game changers that will really reshape the environment in a number of industries. We're impressed, for example, by the fact that Elon pointed out that it's possible that because of unlimited demand for the semi, they in theory could shut down all their other operations and only do electric semis and make a killing in the process because there's so few people that can scale up into the space in the manner that Tesla is able to. Again, the theme of varsity versus junior varsity. So we're excited for the company. It's obvious why the stock price is doing well, and I think this is terrific. One of the things that we did not cover in our last show we actually did some research to figure out what was going on with hiring by Tesla in different key locations around the United States, primarily based on trying to identify where and how manufacturing was going to occur. There's something that's going on, which is Tesla is now starting to deliver their solar roof. And if you'll note, in many locations, Elon has indicated that their target is to produce about 1,000 and deliver 1,000 solar roofs a week, approximately. And so you can see how this might be impactful on revenue, given that each roof is, in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. So it could be a significant generator of revenue for the company and be very impactful going forward. So, I guess the theme that we want to pursue here is the fact that we're seeing hiring going on, which suggests that these products are now about to hit the market where they've actually been delayed for quite a while. And so I think that's pretty exciting news. And, we're hearing from different folks a bit of a buzz about that. And we've been impressed because we've encountered Tesla owners who have roof changeover plans, and they've actually been delaying those roof replacements and repairs in anticipation of Tesla being able to deliver. We're also, about 50% of the electric vehicles, particularly Teslas that are sold in the U.S., are actually sold in the greater California, but Los Angeles being the concentration. And there's a huge initiative there to incentivize people to actually switch to solar rather than other methods. So we're looking forward to a prosperous 2020 for Tesla for all the reasons we described. We actually really wanted to get your opinion on the varsity versus junior varsity because, Nissan was selling a lot of Leafs. Same thing Toyota with their hybrids until the Model 3 started hitting in large numbers. And so now you have huge numbers of those vehicles being sold. And with the happy customers, a growing base of Tesla sort of taking over the category to the tune of 80% market share in the United States. And we will not be surprised if that becomes the theme in both Europe and China as the major competitors try to figure out how they're going to respond in an effective way. So as we shared, we definitely look forward to your comments on all of this. I wanted to greetings to our friend in Nova Scotia, I believe Brian. Wanted to Tech 52. Thanks for your comments as well. I think it's going to be a very interesting year, a very profitable year for Tesla, and it really highlights the theme that when sort of Silicon Valley folks look at a car, they see a computer with wheels, but when the auto executives look at a car, they see a car with a computer inside. And so you can really see the competitive advantages that go with the software edge that Tesla has over so many competitors. Again, the theme varsity versus junior varsity. You're really seeing a junior varsity solution on the software side coming from the major autos, while Tesla is delivering a huge amount really as the varsity player here and successfully doing so. There's a comment Gareth just shared that Boeing is making SpaceX look good. I was kind of surprised, as you all know, Boeing just put up they're supposed to ship as a test flight to the Space Center, and it failed. And this failure comes a couple of weeks after Tesla was able to successfully deliver to the same destination without a problem. So, that SpaceX situation is also kind of interesting because through processes Boeing came up with, they're charging the government 3 times the amount that SpaceX is for the same activity. And so to not have it be a successful effort, I think, is definitely egg on the face of Boeing and the government for not paying Tesla more and giving Tesla more business. So I would agree, Gareth. It's an excellent comment about Boeing making SpaceX look good, and pretty crazy, I'd have to say. At any rate, just a reminder in terms of our health section of our show. Number 1, don't forget 25 leg lifts per leg. Strengthens your quad muscles, limiting the chance of knee issues. Number 2, try the 5-2 diet. Fasting is confirmed from research to start impacting whether or not Alzheimer's and other issues when it comes to mental health come in. So it might be worth trying it out a bit. I suggest the 5-2, but there are a number of options that you have out there, and that was suggested to us by an NIH doc. Number 3, don't go to bed within 3 hours or within 2 hours of eating good. Even better if you do so within 4 hours so the food can fully digest. And we have a long list of recommendations that have been made, and we're trying to pick and choose, but the 4th would be no more than once a week fried foods is actually a really good sort of health suggestion. Really, the less, the more. So recommendations in that regard. I just saw a comment shared by our friends from Norway regarding enjoying the show, and we're glad you are, and that's awesome. So I guess it's Bjorn Vebo. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, Lehitrot, Hebrew, Hoda Hafez, Farsi, Hejdo, Swedish, Zdravstvuyte, which is hello in Russian, Ni hao ma, hello in Chinese, and in Jamaica we say enough respect, walk good man. There's some of our African friends that are trying to introduce me there. I haven't figured out how to pronounce it yet, but I will get it down, and walk good there also is the statement that they made. And love to hear your feedback on our show today. Have a great day. Thanks for now, and enjoy your holidays if we don't meet again before then.